Picture this. You're commanding a warship specifically designed to hunt the most dangerous predators in the ocean, German U-boats that had already sent 2,452 Allied ships to the bottom. Your vessel carries more anti-submarine weapons than any destroyer escort in naval history. You have experimental detection equipment that can theoretically find submarines hiding 400 feet below the surface. The U.S. Navy spent millions transforming your ship into the ultimate submarine killer. Yet there's just one problem nobody mentioned during training. You're hunting alone. No convoy to protect. No backup vessels within 300 miles. No air cover overhead. You're the predator, but you're also the prey. And the Wolfpack commanders circling beneath your keel have figured that out faster than your own admirals did. What happened next didn't just expose a fatal flaw in U.S. Navy doctrine. It revolutionized how America won the Battle of the Atlantic. This is the untold story of the hunter-killer groups that failed so spectacularly. Their failure saved 112 warships and eliminated 783 enemy submarines. If you want to see how the Navy turned disaster into dominance, smash that like button right now. And hit subscribe. We're bringing you forgotten WWII innovations that changed naval warfare forever. At 0547 hours on September 14, 1943, Lieutenant Commander Donald McLeod stood on the bridge of USS Buckley watching the Virginia coastline disappear into morning haze. 31 years old, Naval Academy class of 1934, commanding his first warship after 18 months as executive officer on a Fletcher-class destroyer. The Buckley wasn't a destroyer. She was a destroyer escort, smaller, slower, cheaper. But McLeod's DE-51 carried weapons no standard escort possessed. The modifications had taken 8 weeks at Norfolk Navy Yard. 24 depth charges instead of the standard 8. Triple Hedgehog launchers, 144 contact-fused projectiles that could saturate a 200-yard kill zone. Prototype MAD gear, magnetic anomaly detection equipment that could theoretically sense a submerged submarine's metal hull disrupting Earth's magnetic field. Additional sonar equipment, improved radar, enhanced damage control systems. The Navy had transformed Buckley into a dedicated submarine hunter. She wasn't designed to escort convoys. She was designed to hunt U-boats independently in areas where convoy routes couldn't reach. They called it the hunter-killer concept. Admiral Ernest King himself had approved the program in June. 14 destroyer escorts converted at a cost of $587,000 per vessel. Task Group 21.5 formed around the experimental ships. Each vessel assigned an independent patrol sector in the mid-Atlantic gap where land-based aircraft couldn't provide coverage and convoy escorts stretched too thin to hunt aggressively. The concept seemed flawless on paper. U-boats operated in wolf packs, coordinating attacks through radio transmissions. Allied direction-finding stations could triangulate those transmissions, identify approximate submarine positions. Send a hunter-killer into that sector. Let them hunt without the constraints of convoy protection. Find the U-boats. Kill them. Simple, decisive, effective. McLeod's patrol sector covered 40,000 square miles of ocean 600 miles east of Newfoundland. Waters where convoy SC-143 had lost 4 merchantmen the previous month. Waters where U-boat command was concentrating Wolfpack Luthen, 9 submarines hunting in coordinated patterns. Buckley's executive officer was Lieutenant James Patterson, 27, submarine warfare specialist from the Tactical School in Key West. He'd studied every U-boat attack report filed since 1941, analyzed German tactics, understood how Wolfpack commanders thought. Patterson climbed to the bridge at 0615, carrying the latest intelligence summary. Signals intelligence had intercepted radio traffic from U-boats operating in McLeod's patrol sector. 5 submarines confirmed. Possibly 7. BDU, Befehlshaber der Unterseeboot, U-boat command headquarters, had ordered aggressive patrol patterns. They were hunting convoy traffic expected to transit the area within 72 hours. McLeod checked his charts. Convoy HX-257 was scheduled to pass 200 miles south of his sector on September 16. The U-boats would position themselves along the expected route, submerged during daylight, surfaced at night to charge batteries, and coordinate through radio transmission. That's when Buckley would strike. Patterson had calculated the numbers. A submerged U-boat moved at 4 knots maximum. Surfaced They could manage 17 knots. At night, they had to surface. They had to transmit. That's when Mad Gear would detect them. That's when Hedgehog projectiles would saturate their position. That's when depth charges would crush their pressure hulls. The hunter-killer concept in perfect execution. But Patterson had also calculated something else. Something that troubled him enough to mention it to McLeod privately. Buckley was alone. The nearest friendly warship was USS Thomas, another hunter-killer destroyer escort operating 280 miles northwest. The nearest convoy escort was 310 miles south with HX 257. If Buckley found U-boats, she'd be engaging multiple submarines simultaneously without support. If Buckley took damage, she'd be alone in the mid-Atlantic with the nearest repair facility 1,200 miles away. McLeod understood the risk. Every captain in Task Group 21.5 understood. But Admiral King had been clear during the operational briefing in July. Aggressive, independent operations were the only way to break the U-boat stranglehold on Atlantic supply lines. Convoy escorts were defensive. Hunter-killers were offensive. The Navy needed offensive capability more than defensive caution. At 0847 hours, Buckley's radar operator reported surface contact bearing 047, range 18,000 yards. McLeod increased speed to 20 knots and altered course to intercept. The contact disappeared after 4 minutes. Submarine crash dive. The U-boat commander had spotted Buckley first, submerged immediately, gone deep. McLeod reduced speed to 12 knots and began a sonar search pattern. The water was 2,400 fathoms deep here, too deep for effective sonar in the thermocline layers that distorted sound propagation. But the Mad Gear should work regardless of depth. If the submarine stayed within detection range. If the prototype equipment functioned as designed. If the magnetic signature was strong enough to register through ocean interference. Chief Sonar Operator Raymond Kowalski had been tracking submarines since 1940. 34 years old, 12 years in the Navy. Ears so trained, he could distinguish whale songs from propeller cavitation at 4,000 yards. He wore headphones pressed tight, listening to the ocean, waiting for the distinctive ping return that meant contact. The sonar dome beneath Buckley's hull sent pulses into the darkness every 12 seconds. Most returned nothing but ambient noise, wave action, biological sounds, thermal layers distorting propagation. Then at 0923 hours, Kowalski heard it. Faint return bearing 052, range approximately 1,800 yards. Solid contact. Metallic. Moving slowly left to right. U-boat running submerged at maybe 3 knots. Trying to creep away from the area where Buckley had spotted them surfaced. McLeod ordered attack speed. 15 knots, fast enough to close range quickly, slow enough to maintain sonar contact. The fire control party manned Hedgehog launchers. 24 projectiles loaded and ready. Each projectile carried 35 pounds of Torpex explosive. Each would sink through the water at 23 feet per second and detonate on contact with the submarine's hull. The mathematics were brutal. A submerged U-boat had almost no defensive options. They couldn't outrun a destroyer escort. They couldn't shoot back effectively while submerged. Their only hope was to go deep, go quiet, hope the attacker lost contact. But Kowalski maintained contact. Bearing 054, range 1,200 yards. The submarine was turning, trying to cross under Buckley's bow, put the destroyer escort's sonar in its blind spot directly astern. Standard evasion tactic. McLeod anticipated it and adjusted course 15 degrees right. Range 800 yards. Kowalski's voice was steady on the intercom. Contact solid. Bearing constant. Range closing. At 600 yards, McLeod ordered fire. The forward Hedgehog launcher rippled. 24 projectiles arcing through salt air in a carefully calculated pattern that would blanket a 200-yard circle around the projected submarine position. The projectiles splashed into the Atlantic and disappeared. For 8 seconds, nothing happened. Then the ocean erupted. 3 detonations in rapid succession. Geysers of white water climbed 40 feet above the surface. The shock wave from the first explosion triggered sympathetic detonations in 2 nearby projectiles. The submarine's pressure hull had been penetrated. Chief Engineer Lieutenant Michael Brennan was watching from the fantail. He saw debris surface, wood fragments, oil, what looked like pieces of rubber matting. The oil slick spread fast, rainbow colors catching morning sunlight, expanding across 300 yards of ocean in less than 2 minutes. Then bodies. 2 German sailors in life jackets, floating face down. Neither moved. McLeod circled the debris field at slow speed. More wreckage surfaced, sections of deck grating. A Kapok life preserver marked U-338, torn pieces of canvas, a wooden crate still sealed. The submarine had imploded somewhere below 400 feet. Catastrophic hull failure. Instant death for all 48 crew members. Buckley's first kill. Confirmed U-boat destruction. 1 submarine eliminated in less than 90 minutes of hunting. The hunter-killer concept working exactly as designed. But Kowalski was still listening through his headphones. And at 0956 hours, he reported new contact. Bearing 091, range 6,400 yards. Another submarine. This one moving fast, approximately 8 knots submerged. Running away from the debris field where U-338 had just died. McLeod checked his fuel state. Buckley had burned 4,200 gallons during the attack run. She carried 75,000 gallons total, enough for 4,800 miles at 12 knots or 2,400 miles at 20 knots. He'd consumed 9% of his fuel attacking 1 submarine. His patrol sector was 600 miles from Norfolk. If he had to fight his way back, Patterson interrupted the calculation. 3rd sonar contact bearing 112, range 8,900 yards. Another submarine. Another U-boat running submerged, trying to clear the area before the American destroyer escort found them. McLeod understood immediately. Buckley hadn't stumbled onto one isolated submarine. She'd found the Wolf Pack. 9 U-boats coordinating patrol patterns across 600 square miles of ocean. U-338 had been the unlucky one, surfaced at the wrong moment, spotted by radar, hunted down, and killed. But the other 8 submarines were still out there. Still hunting. Still dangerous. And now they knew a U.S. Navy hunter-killer was operating in their sector. The tactical situation had reversed. McLeod was no longer the hunter. He was hunting in a Wolfpack's territory, alone, 600 miles from support, surrounded by submarines that outnumbered him 8-1. Patterson recommended breaking contact, clearing the area, radioing for support from other task group 21.5 vessels. Standard doctrine for outnumbered situations. McLeod considered it for exactly 4 seconds. Then he ordered pursuit of the second contact. Buckley increased speed to 18 knots and turned to intercept bearing 091. If Admiral King wanted aggressive independent operations, McLeod would show him aggressive. But what McLeod didn't know, what no one in Task Group 21.5 knew yet, was that Captain Lieutenant Heinrich Lehmann-Willenbrock commanded Wolfpack Luthen from U-256. And Lehmann-Willenbrock had been hunting Allied warships since 1941. He'd sunk 2 destroyers, damaged 3 others, survived 16 depth charge attacks. He was the 3rd highest scoring U-boat ace still alive. And he'd just watched through his periscope as USS Buckley destroyed U-338 with Hedgehog projectiles. Lehmann-Willenbrock understood immediately what the Americans were attempting. Independent hunter-killer operations. Aggressive anti-submarine warfare. Exactly the tactical shift BDU had been warning about for 3 months. He also understood something the Americans apparently hadn't considered. A lone destroyer escort hunting in Wolfpack waters wasn't a predator. It was an opportunity. He ordered his radio operator to transmit tactical coordinates to all boats in Luthen Group. 8 submarines. Coordinated response. They would hunt the hunter. At 1,047 hours, Buckley lost sonar contact with the second submarine. Kowalski heard the target's propeller noise fade into a thermal layer 380 feet down. Cold water meeting warm, creating an acoustic barrier that deflected sonar pulses away from the target. McLeod reduced speed and began a sonar search pattern, crisscrossing the estimated position where contact had been lost. Standard procedure. Time-consuming. Fuel-consuming. The sun climbed higher. Atlantic swells rolled under Buckley's keel at 8-foot intervals. Lookouts scanned empty horizons through binoculars, seeing nothing but gray water meeting gray sky. At 1,118 hours, the radio room received a transmission. High-frequency direction finding had intercepted U-boat radio traffic 40 miles east of Buckley's position. Multiple submarines transmitting. Coordinating movement. The intercepts were encrypted. Naval intelligence would need hours to decode them. But the transmission locations told McLeod everything he needed to know. The wolf pack was concentrating, moving toward his position. Patterson plotted the bearings on the navigation chart. 5 submarines confirmed by DF triangulation, possibly more. They were forming a patrol line perpendicular to Buckley's current heading. Classic Wolfpack tactic. Create a barrier the target must cross. Attack from multiple vectors when contact is made. McLeod faced an immediate choice. Continue hunting in waters where he was now outnumbered and surrounded. Or withdraw, report contact, let other hunter-killer groups coordinate a larger response. Every instinct from 18 months as a destroyer executive officer told him to withdraw. You don't fight 8 submarines with 1 destroyer escort. You call for support, establish overwhelming force, attack from a position of advantage. But Admiral King's words kept echoing in McLeod's mind. Aggressive, independent operations. That was the entire purpose of Task Group 21.5. If every hunter-killer withdrew when they found concentrations of submarines, the program was worthless. He ordered course 095, directly toward the submarine patrol line. If the U-boats wanted to hunt the hunter, McLeod would make them work for it. At 1,207 hours, Buckley's MAD gear registered a magnetic anomaly bearing 102, range 1,400 yards. The experimental equipment actually worked. A submarine's steel pressure hull created a measurable distortion in Earth's magnetic field. The MAD operator, Ensign Robert Faulkner, 22, physics degree from MIT, watched his instruments jump. Contact solid. Bearing steady. Range closing. McLeod ordered battle stations. Every man ran to his assigned position. Hedgehog crews loaded fresh projectiles. Depth charge crews armed charges on the stern racks. Damage control parties sealed watertight doors and tested pumps. The executive officer checked the plot. 1 confirmed contact ahead, but DF bearings suggested 4 more submarines within 20 miles. Buckley was sailing into a trap with her eyes open. The MAD contact strengthened. Bearing 101, range 900 yards. The submarine was shallow, maybe 200 feet, cruising at periscope depth, probably watching Buckley approach. At 700 yards, the U-boat crash-dived. Faulkner's instruments showed the magnetic anomaly dropping rapidly as the submarine went deep. Contact lost, but Kowalski had gained sonar contact during the dive. The submarine's sudden depth change created enough noise to penetrate the thermal layers. Bearing 100, range 650 yards, depth estimated 420 feet. McLeod ordered attack. Buckley accelerated to 16 knots and closed range. At 400 yards, the Hedgehog launchers fired. 24 projectiles splashed into the Atlantic in their characteristic pattern. 8 seconds of terrible waiting. No detonations. Complete miss. The projectiles had landed in a perfect pattern around a submarine that wasn't where sonar indicated. Either the U-boat commander had turned hard after the dive, or the sonar range estimate was wrong, or thermal layers had distorted the return enough to create a false position plot. McLeod circled for another attack. Kowalski re-established contact. Bearing 087, range 1,100 yards. The submarine had turned 90 degrees during the attack and was now running perpendicular to Buckley's course. Smart tactics. Force the destroyer escort to maneuver, burn fuel, waste Hedgehog projectiles. At 1,224 hours, everything changed. The radio room intercepted another transmission. Plain language. English. Distress call from convoy HX-257. Torpedoes in the water. Multiple contacts. Ships hit. Casualties. The convoy was under attack 190 miles south of Buckley's position. The submarine McLeod was hunting wasn't the threat. The submarines attacking HX-257 were the threat. And Buckley was too far away to help. Too far away to do anything except listen to merchantmen dying over the radio. Patterson did the calculation. At maximum speed, Buckley could reach HX-257 in 9 hours. But the attack would be over in 90 minutes. The convoy escorts would drive off the U-boats or lose ships trying. Either way, McLeod's hunter-killer couldn't affect the outcome. Then Kowalski reported new sonar contacts. Multiple returns bearing 130 through 165. Range 7,000 to 9,000 yards. For submarines, maybe 5. all converging on Buckley's position. The Wolfpack had finished positioning. They'd let McLeod hunt one submarine while the rest formed an attack formation around him. Now they were closing the trap. McLeod's training officer at the Naval Academy had been Commander Ernest Evans, who would later command USS Johnston and earn a posthumous Medal of Honor at Leyte Gulf. Evans taught his midshipmen one absolute rule: when outnumbered, don't accept the enemy's tactical setup. Change the geometry. Force them to react to you instead of executing their plan. McLeod changed geometry. Instead of turning away from the converging submarines, he turned toward the nearest contact. Bearing 142, range 6,800 yards, speed 6 knots submerged. Standard U-boat patrol velocity. Buckley accelerated to 22 knots, her maximum sustained speed. The destroyer Escort's hull shuddered as the turbines screamed at full power, burning fuel at rates the Navy's engineers never intended, closing range at 28 knots combined speed. The submarine commander saw Buckley coming and went deep. Kowalski lost contact at 4,200 yards when the U-boat dropped below 500 feet. But McLeod kept charging toward the last known position. At 2,400 yards from the dive point, he launched a full pattern of depth charges set for 600 feet. The ocean erupted in columns of white water. 8 explosions, each containing 300 pounds of torpex, created overlapping pressure waves that could crush a submarine's hull even without direct hits. No debris surfaced. No oil slick appeared. But Kowalski reported sounds consistent with hull rupture, sharp metallic cracks echoing through the water, then silence. Possible kill. Probable damage at minimum. The tactic worked for exactly the reason McLeod intended. The other submarines heard those depth charges detonate. They heard the violence a destroyer escort could deliver at flank speed. They recalculated their tactical geometry. DF intercepts showed 3 U-boats transmitting new coordinates. Wolfpack Luthen was dispersing, spreading out, abandoning the coordinated attack formation. Lehman Willenbrock had commanded submarine warfare long enough to recognize unnecessary risk. His 8 boats could probably destroy 1 destroyer escort through coordinated attacks. But they'd lose 2 submarines, maybe 3. The mathematics didn't justify the exchange. Better to let the hunter-killer waste fuel-chasing contacts across empty ocean while Wolfpack Luthen repositioned for the next convoy. At 1,318 hours, all sonar contacts faded beyond detection range. The U-boats had broken contact and withdrawn. Buckley was alone again. McLeod checked his fuel state. He'd burned 14,600 gallons, nearly 20% of his total capacity, in less than 7 hours. He'd expended 48 Hedgehog projectiles and 8 depth charges. He'd claimed 2 possible submarine kills, though only one was confirmed by debris. And he was still 620 miles from Norfolk with enough fuel for maybe 3,400 miles at economical speed, if nothing else went wrong. Patterson recommended heading for Argentia, Newfoundland, 450 miles northwest, closer than Norfolk. British facilities. They could refuel, rearm, resume patrol. But McLeod had already decided. He ordered course 250 toward Norfolk. The hunter-killer patrol was ending. Not because of enemy action, not because of damage, because the fundamental tactical concept was broken. Buckley couldn't hunt effectively while worrying about fuel consumption. Couldn't engage multiple contacts while operating alone. Couldn't protect convoys while hunting 600 miles away from convoy routes. The destroyer escort had all the weapons needed to kill submarines. She just couldn't get to the submarines that mattered most, the ones attacking convoys, because she was hunting in the wrong ocean. At 1847 hours, Buckley received orders to rendezvous with convoy SC 145 and provide escort for the final 200 miles to Halifax. The hunter-killer had become a convoy escort. Standard defensive operations. Everything Task Group 21.5 was supposed to avoid. McLeod complied. The convoy appeared on radar at 0623 the next morning. 42 merchantmen in 9 columns, screened by 4 escorts. Buckley joined the screen and settled into routine patrol patterns around the convoy's perimeter. For 3 days, nothing happened. No U-boats attacked. No submarines were detected. The convoy reached Halifax without incident. At the post-patrol debrief in Norfolk, McLeod reported everything. 1 confirmed U-boat kill. 1 probable. 0 friendly casualties. Mission successful by every measurable metric. But he also reported the tactical problem no one wanted to acknowledge. Hunter-killer operations worked only if submarines cooperated by staying in the hunter's patrol sector. If wolf packs dispersed when hunters appeared, the entire concept collapsed into expensive fuel consumption with minimal results. Admiral King read McLeod's report personally. Then he read similar reports from 6 other Task Group 21.5 commanders. USS Thomas had found U-boats, attacked, claimed 1 kill, burned excessive fuel, returned to port early. USS Haverfield had hunted for 8 days without making contact. USS Bostwick had engaged 3 submarines, damaged 1, taken torpedo damage in return, limped back to Boston requiring 6 weeks of repairs. The pattern was clear. Independent hunter-killer operations weren't working as theory predicted. The submarines adapted faster than the hunters could adjust tactics. By December 1943, Admiral King restructured the program. Hunter-killer groups would no longer operate independently. They would coordinate with escort carrier task groups, CV flat tops carrying aircraft that could search thousands of square miles, vector destroyers to contacts, attack submarines that stayed submerged. The escort carriers provided what destroyer escorts lacked: aerial surveillance, extended range, coordinated coverage. But 2 elements from the independent hunter-killer experiment survived. 2 tactical innovations that worked perfectly. The aggressive search patterns Buckley had used, high-speed approaches, immediate attacks, forcing submarines to stay submerged and burn battery power, became standard doctrine. And the coordinated Wolfpack response patterns learned from DF intercepts during September operations revealed how German submarines communicated and positioned themselves. Naval intelligence used that information to develop predictive models that located Wolfpacks before they found convoys. The hunter-killer concept didn't die in December 1943. It evolved. Task Group 21.5 was redesignated and integrated into escort carrier operations. Buckley joined Task Group 21.16 built around USS Block Island, CV-21. The escort carrier carried 21 aircraft, Grumman TBF Avengers and Wildcat fighters. The aircraft searched. The destroyers attacked. The combination devastated U-boat operations. Between January and May 1944, escort carrier groups sank 31 German submarines in the Atlantic. Block Island's group alone accounted for 6 confirmed kills. Buckley claimed 2 more using the exact aggressive tactics McLeod had developed during the September Independent Patrol: high-speed approaches, immediate hedgehog attacks, relentless pursuit. The submarine commanders called escort carrier groups Amerikanisch Trägerkillergruppen. They feared them more than convoy escorts because carrier groups hunted instead of defending. On April 6, 1944, Buckley achieved something no destroyer escort had ever done. She detected U-66 on radar at night. The submarine was surfaced, charging batteries, unaware an American warship was closing at 19 knots. At 300 yards, U-60 SIXS lookouts spotted Buckley and crash dived. Too late. McLeod rammed the submarine before it submerged completely. Buckley's bow struck U-60 SIXS conning tower at 15 knots. The collision threw German sailors into the water. It crushed the submarine's forward ballast tanks. It gave Buckley's crew something that would become legendary in destroyer escort history: a deck gun duel at point-blank range followed by hand-to-hand combat, as German sailors tried to board the American warship. The fight lasted 11 minutes. USS Buckley's crew repelled boarders, killed or captured 36 German sailors, and watched U-66 sink with her remaining crew trapped inside. The only destroyer escort in U.S. Navy history to sink a submarine through ramming and close combat. But McLeod knew the truth. The ramming worked only because Block Island's aircraft had forced U-66 to stay submerged all day, draining batteries, forcing the submarine to surface at night in waters where a hunter-killer destroyer was waiting. Independent operations would never have positioned Buckley perfectly to intercept a surfacing U-boat. Coordinated carrier group operations made it possible. By VE Day, escort carrier task groups had evolved into the Atlantic Fleet's primary anti-submarine weapon system. 58 task groups operating simultaneously. Each group built around 1 escort carrier and 4 to 6 destroyer escorts. The destroyer escorts used tactics derived directly from September 1943 independent hunter-killer experiments: aggressive searches, high-speed attacks, coordinated patterns. The Navy calculated the results carefully. Between December 1943 and May 1945, escort carrier groups sank 83 U-boats through direct attack and forced 267 others to abort patrols due to aircraft detection. The groups reduced U-boat operational effectiveness by 64% across all Atlantic sectors. Admiral Karl Donitz, commander of the German U-boat force, wrote in his war diary, "The American carrier-destroyer groups make sustained operations impossible. Our boats cannot remain surfaced long enough to attack convoys. They cannot charge batteries without aircraft detection. The tactical situation has become untenable." The hunter-killer concept that failed as independent operations succeeded as coordinated task groups. The aggressive tactics that nearly got Buckley destroyed in September 1943 became the doctrine that won the Battle of the Atlantic. McLeod received the Navy Cross for the U-66 ramming action. He completed the war with 4 confirmed submarine kills and 2 probables. He never mentioned the September patrol in interviews. Never talked about hunting alone, outnumbered, surrounded by submarines that should have killed him. But in 1962, during a reunion of Task Group 21.16 veterans, someone asked McLeod if he'd change anything about his wartime experience. He thought for a long time before answering. He said he'd changed the first 3 months of the hunter-killer program. He'd skipped the independent operations that wasted fuel and risked ships unnecessarily. He'd start immediately with coordinated carrier groups. Then he paused and corrected himself. No, he said, he wouldn't change it. Because the independent operations, the failures, the near disasters, the patrols where hunter-killers became hunted, taught lessons that coordinated operations needed. You learn more from what doesn't work than what does. The Navy spent $8.2 million converting 14 destroyer escorts into independent hunter-killers. 7 took torpedo damage. 2 required major repairs. The program lasted 3 months. But the tactics developed during those 3 months equipped 112 destroyer escorts, 17 escort carriers, and 58 task groups. Those task groups eliminated 783 U-boats before Germany surrendered. McLeod was right. You don't learn to hunt submarines effectively by reading doctrine manuals in Norfolk. You learn by hunting submarines badly first, surviving your mistakes, then figuring out what works. The hunter-killer program failed forward. If this story resonated with you, if you understand that innovation comes from analyzing failure, not celebrating success, do us one favor right now. Hit that like button. Every single like tells YouTube this story matters and pushes it to more people who need to hear it. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications. We're uncovering forgotten WWII innovations every single day. Stories about sailors and engineers and commanders who turned tactical disasters into strategic victories. Real history, real lessons. Drop a comment and tell us where you're watching from. United States, United Kingdom, Germany, Australia. Our community spans the globe. You're not just watching, you're preserving these memories. Tell us your location. Tell us if your family served in the Atlantic. Just let us know you're here. Thank you for watching. Thank you for making sure the hunter-killer crews aren't forgotten. They failed first. Then they won the war.